Hello and welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide chamber of commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we like to focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. Well, if you follow track and field at all, and probably even if you don't, you know that Eugene is special. It's home to the University of Oregon and the school's storied track and cross-country programs. Prees Trail is here, and so is the iconic Hayward Field at the University of Oregon. Eugene is, in fact, TrackTown USA. And even if you aren't, like me, a fan of the sport, you should be interested in this because it is hugely impactful from a business and economic development standpoint. So today I am here in Eugene, and I'm joined by Michael Reilly, who helps keep the Eugene track magic going as Chief Executive Officer of TrackTown USA, a nonprofit that, well, in simple terms, hosts track and field events. And not just any events. TrackTown USA organizes some of the most iconic track and field events in the nation and across the globe, including USA Track and Field Championships, the Olympic Trials, the Prefontaine Classic, and even World Championships. This work, of course, serves the sport and the athletes, but the business of track and field is no small part of the regional economy here in Eugene. So thank you for joining me today, Michael. I look forward to talking with you more about this. Let's start with this. TrackTown USA, of course, is a nickname for Eugene, but it's also the name of the organization you run. That's, very convenient. So talk briefly about the history of TrackTown USA, the organization. When was it formed? What does it do?
Sure, that name is not only convenient, it was also entirely intentional. So our origin goes back to 2005, when this community was awarded the right to host the 2008 Olympic trials. And once we were awarded that, we quickly realized that we really needed a legal entity set up in order to sign contracts, to take the revenue in, to pay the bills. And so that year, a small LLC was formed really with the intention of, well, okay, this will just help us run that business and deliver that event. So that first iteration really was a small company by today's standards. It had 2 to 3 full-time employees, and then really leveraged, a couple of independent contractors, and really kind of much more of a volunteer committee structure where we had extraordinary, professionals volunteering their time. This was kind of their sense of civic duty, a sense of civic pride to deliver that event. It was an amazing team of people, and still to this day, probably one of the teams I'm most proud of having ever been a part of professionally. So really kind of small in 2005, delivered an amazing Olympic trials in 2008, and kind of along the way in preparing to deliver that event, went out and bid to host future events. So the 2009 and 2011 USA Track and Field Championships, and actually the 2012 Olympic trials. So it was kind of, a little kernel of an idea. Oh gosh, the dog that actually caught the car. We've got the Olympic trials. Now we got to figure out how to deliver it. Hey, this is a lot of fun. This is going really well. What if we kind of do the next thing after 2008? And somewhere along the way, onward to 2012, like a lot of people, we started dreaming what else is out there? What could be bigger than hosting the Olympic trials, the premier event in the United States? And so your mind naturally starts to think internationally at that point. And what would it be like to have an aspiration to host international championship events? And oh my gosh, could one day the world championships actually come to Oregon? And we realized as we started to dream that the LLC that was formed in 2005 really was not adequate for those bigger dreams and ambitions. So in 2012, we formed what we are today, a 501c3 based in Eugene. And it seemed fitting, given the steep history and decades of tradition here, to really brand it and identify it as TrackTown USA.
Yeah, well, I think that makes a lot of sense. Before I come back to what you do more today and how you got here, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into the business of track and field?
I strangely wandered into it. I was a track and field athlete in college, and I had kind of dreams and aspirations in staying in the college environment. I thought I was going to become a college professor in computer science, but I didn't really want to go right back into the lab and start my PhD right away. I'd done a lot of lab work as an undergraduate, and I was like, well, let me take a little bit of break before starting that. The college program that I was part of at Stanford was just starting to turn around with a new head coach, Vin Lanana. I was starting to run well, and so I was like, well, let me just take a 1-year sabbatical. I'll help out the track and field program there, and then I'll go on to graduate school. And after the first year, well, I'll go on to graduate school after year 2. And then after year 3, I was like, well, I'll go on to graduate school. And I think about 3 or 4 years into helping out the Stanford track and field program, I realized I'm not going to graduate school. I'm going to keep doing this track and field thing. And I just found myself enjoying and loving every minute of it.
Well, we're glad you did. Okay, so we're sitting here in Eugene, and not far from here is Hayward Field at the University of Oregon. And it seems to have become the unofficial home for several of these major events. I know they're never guaranteed. You got to bid for them and you got to compete to be able to have them. But we are lucky. We have a lot of them. And one of those that you don't necessarily have to bid for in some ways, and you do in others, and I'll have you come back to that, is the Prefontaine Classic, mm-hmm. which is now part of the global Diamond League effort. There are other high-profile meets here as well, too many to list, but I want you to talk about a couple of them, mm-hmm. the key events, and then maybe talk a little bit about how that meet, grew up here, but then became, a fixture in this global stage.
Yeah, we have a really interesting business model, as you mentioned, in that we don't own any event properties. We're actually a company that delivers properties that belong to other organizations such as USA Track and Field, World Athletics, or in the case of the Prefontaine Classic, the Oregon Track Club, and so it is work to go out and win the right to host those events. What has been on our radar for most of our existence has been events with USA Track and Field. We've hosted the Olympic trials 5 consecutive times, going all the way back to 2008. We've hosted the USA Track and Field National Championships 6 times, and we will host it again in 2027. As I mentioned earlier, we had the aspirations for those global championship events, and so we've done the World Under 20 Championships in 2014. We did the World Indoor Championships in Portland in 2016, and of course the World Championships in 2022. And this summer we'll bring back and host once more the World Under 20 Championships in August. But I think the event that most people, certainly in this state, and I think really in the United States, know and love is the Prefontaine Classic. That event just celebrated its 50th anniversary last year. It is the number 1 professional track and field meet in the world. That's just not a branding claim by us. It's an actual metric that is scored. Each meeting is scored internationally, and the Prefontaine Classic has scored the top 2 performance rankings ever in the history of the event. So we're competing right alongside cities like Zurich, London, Paris, and when we get those rankings, and to think that here in Oregon we're really recognized around the world as having the best meetings. All of that's really special to us, but I think our point of pride is in taking events that are owned by others and really investing ourselves in those events and trying to be really good stewards of those events that belong to others and really elevate them by bringing our approach, by allowing the creative talent on our staff to emerge and put some really special touches on them.
Yeah, and these events are pretty extraordinary by most measures for folks who again, aren't track and field fans or haven't watched these on TV. You ought to check out images or video or footage or come down to Eugene and go to one because they're pretty impressive from an organization standpoint, a marketing standpoint. But for me in this podcast here today, they're pretty impressive from an economic impact standpoint too. And I got to think some of these events, especially those multi-day events that are national or global, those, for example, translate into hotel room stays and people eating out at restaurants and shopping at local stores. Do you have any sense of the economic impact of what you're bringing to the community?
Well, thanks to the work done by Travel Lane County, we really do, and I think the impact is extraordinary. Just looking at the 2025 calendar of events, beginning with the Eugene Marathon, running through the high school state championships, the NCAA championships, and the Prefontaine Classic all the way through to the USA Track and Field Championships. Last summer, this community hosted 16 nights of competition, but each of those events obviously come with shoulder nights, which is an additional 10 nights. So we're talking about almost an entire month of the year where this community is really at hotel capacity with visitors, sometimes from around the state of Oregon, but really from outside the state of Oregon coming, filling up all those hotel rooms, spilling over into Airbnb, which does generate local tax, and then obviously eating in the restaurants. Those events that have high athlete participation, don't try to go to Trader Joe's, don't try to go to Whole Foods when those athletes are making their shopping trips, because they're trickling everywhere throughout the community. So in terms of the numbers, the Prefontaine Classic annually is a little over $4 million. A 4-day championship like the USA Championships starts to get a little over $9 million. And then when you look at something like the Olympic trials happening once every 4 years, now we're talking in excess of $30 million for those 10 days. It's really extraordinary. Travel Lane County calculated last year that the 2025 season with all of those events was north of $50 million in terms of economic impact. And that's just extraordinary to think about what the sport of track and field can do for the state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for some it's taken for granted, for some it's out of sight, out of mind, but it is a really extraordinary impact, and we don't want that to get lost.
It is. And I think what's harder to capture is the marketing value that is then exported outside of the state. So for the Prefontaine Classic, for example, 40% of the spectators come and visit from outside of Oregon. For the U.S. Championships, that number grows to 60% of the spectators are from outside. So they're here, they're experiencing all that the state has to offer, and they go back home and they tell wonderful stories of the Willamette Valley or going out to the coast, going to see wineries. They're doing much more than just going to the stadium and watching competition. And of course, you put and televise those events on, live on NBC, and you get all now with the digital pickup on Peacock, you clip all those, NBC clips them into YouTube, so they're showing up in digital media feeds throughout the year. I don't think the economic impact takes into account all that marketing value that gets exported for the state.
That's a really good point. Didn't I hear, I may be making this up, but I think I remember hearing something last year around those large events, I think specifically the Prefontaine Classic in the USA Track and Field National and Para Championships, that nearly every state, there's a ticket purchased from nearly every state, if not every state.
Yes, we usually get about 49, and then it's a last second push to get us across to the 50th state. We're sitting for the Prefontaine Classic right now. We've got the 49 states ticked off. We're just still trying to get someone from Mississippi to buy a ticket.
Okay, well, I will be making a phone call.
There we go.
To my counterparts in Mississippi.
Perfect.
So we'll see if we can close that down. But yeah, it's tremendous, the marketing value. And like you said, Eugene's not Paris or Zurich or New York or London. It's not even Oregon's biggest city, let alone the nation's. So in what ways do the relative size of the city hurt or help when it comes to bringing athletic competitions here?
The size really is, it's two sides of the same coin. So what we hear when we're bidding, the things that we need to kind of overcome when we're making our presentations is, yes, there is not the same hotel capacity here as there is in a major metropolitan area, and there's not a single hotel that has hundreds and hundreds of rooms where you can house all the athletes or all of a particular kind of client group. We're a college town, right? So the after hours is different than it is New York, the city that never sleeps. Well, we do sleep here.
Well, it's because you got to be rested to get up and run early in the morning.
In Eugene. So, if we have a night of competition that closes down at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, there's not going to be the same offerings as there might be in a major metropolitan area. So those are some of the uphill challenges we face. But at the same time, we represent that size as, quite honestly, some of our greatest strengths, because when a major event is held in our community, it does take over the community, and that has real brand and marketing value for USA Track and Field for our national championships. It is not uncommon to go for your morning coffee and for the Olympic gold medalist Ryan Krauser to be standing in line getting his coffee at exactly the same time. It is not uncommon to go, do your shopping at Trader Joe's and see, on the chalkboard, welcome NCAA teams, or, drive by and see on the marquee, go Team USA when we're hosting the Olympic trials. There have been other times when, the Olympic trials has been in other cities, and I remember attending those events, and you could go to a restaurant 3 miles from the stadium, and the restaurant staff there, what brings you to the town? And you start talking about the event. Oh, I didn't know that was here. That is impossible to happen in this community, and the people operating those businesses here, they know and appreciate the sport. Yes, I've got my tickets. I'm taking my family on Saturday. It really is a strength in putting on our bids that the community embraces these events. But the reality of being this college town at the University of Oregon, our biggest competitive advantage is Hayward Field, without a doubt. 100 years, not only 100 years of history, but it has been redesigned and reimagined for what are the next 100 years of track and field. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, let's talk about Hayward Field a little bit more. I was just there for a few days this past week, and I get excited every time I walk in. But it's extraordinary. Yes. And you mentioned it. It is the single biggest competitive advantage we've got. And so just talk a little bit more about what that place means to the sport, to the community, and to your ability to partner with those event owners and really make their event shine.
For us as an event organizer, we're immediately drawn to the modernization of those things. It really is in many ways set up for plug and play delivery of major championship events. So, NBC comes in, takes over an entire soccer field for the Olympic trials, but they're just unplugging their cables, walking 20 feet, and plugging it into the junction boxes to make sure that the fiber connections are all made right to their cameras. That doesn't happen in a track and field stadium in most cases anywhere else in the world. So it has those kind of infrastructure benefits, but I think the real competitive advantage is how the designers conceived of what is the purpose of Hayward Field. And when you watch the videos of those designers talking about when the stadium was unveiled, they really talked about designing a theater for track and field. And so all the seats are world-class stadium seats. They are right there you are 3 feet from the outside of lane 9 at the stadium. So every athlete that wins gets an opportunity to take a victory lap around the stadium. So if you're sitting in the front row, you're high-fiving Olympic champions and world records. The way the stadium roof has been designed, that sound that emanates from a sold-out crowd just bounces all over the stadium. So there is a wall of sound carrying athletes around the track. If a long jumper gets onto the runway and wants crowd support with rhythmic clapping, they just have to turn, and there are 6,000 people right there in unison creating this energy that I think the athletes feed off of, and that's why I think we see so many record-setting performances at Hayward Field. And it's not just the professional athletes. If you watch the performances at the high school state championships, it's exactly the same thing. Records get set, the crowd responds, and the athletes, standing on the podium have nothing but smiles on their face.
Yeah,
it's an extraordinary stadium. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world.
It's pretty incredible. The other thing I think TrackTown USA has done a great job with, and you alluded to it earlier, but I'd love for you to go back to it, is partnering with local vendors. Why is that so important to this organization?
Well, there's the brass tacks of it, which is it's expensive to deliver these events. So we need to think creatively about what are the sources of revenue that we can generate. So you have the traditional ones, such as ticket revenue. Sometimes you get merchandise rights, but you really need to find those commercial partners to lend additional energy, value, and more importantly, cash or value in kind sponsorship agreement. So, but in order to give them the value, it's not always just what you can do in the stadium. It's what can you create outside of the stadium to create an extended fan festival that spectators can interact with these brands on a longer basis, or the brands create a particular activation that the spectators have fun, so that it is an outing going to the event. It's not just about the competition itself. I think all of those are important, but what we have found recently is what is of extraordinary value is leaning into the food truck industry here in the state of Oregon. The creativity behind those businesses, the offerings that they have, the service that they provide, the quality of food and drink that they offer. I mean, that's all local Oregon businesses doing cutting edge things, and to have them be part of the experience, I think is a great story for Oregon, for all these spectators that are visiting from outside of the state.
Yeah, that's great. I know I'm just chuckling a little bit to myself because the meet I was at this last week, the lines at the food trucks were long, and not that the food we were offered as people working at the meet wasn't great, but we wanted some of that action too, and we didn't have time to get there. Yep. So one other thing locally, and then we'll switch gears a little bit, but I want to make sure to touch on, these are complicated events to put on. You've talked about that. It requires a lot of workforce. Mm-hmm. So how does, just walk us through that a little bit. How do you think about the workforce for these meets and engaging with the community to help round out your needs for those 4, 10 to whatever it is days of competition?
Sure. We're, by most standards, a relatively small company. We're about 25 full-time employees, and our full-time employees really are charged. Their primary responsibility is leading about 9 months of planning before we get to a summer of events. But 25 people is nowhere near the number that are needed to deliver a major event. So we end up growing for 3 to 4 months a year with some seasonal hires that will come in on various contracts to grow. So, for example, our workforce and volunteer team is one person leading the planning, leading the charge for those 9 months, but then they'll balloon to a staff of 6 to take care of answering questions, making sure the uniforms are going to fit, getting everybody in the credentialing system to make sure that they can get the access that they need, and so on. Our creative team will grow from a talented, group of 4 or 5 to about 16 on competition days, which includes additional videographers, photographers, publishing assistants, creative social media specialists, just to help tell the story of what's going on. So we stay relatively small, but in terms of a paid staff, we'll grow to about 65 in the summer, but we will grow to several hundred volunteers in order to deliver that. So we'll have about 350 volunteers helping us deliver the Prefontaine Classic, doing anything from, ushering in the stadium to welcoming the athletes and checking them into the hotel, to making sure they get on the right shuttle bus, to officiating the events when the competition gets started.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's always been fun to see live and in person is it feels intentional. So I'll give you credit for it, even if it's not. You don't have to admit it. But the intentionality around the opportunities you give young people to cut their teeth at events like this, or on some of those seasonal or part-time jobs that you mentioned. And some of them may stay. Some of them may go off to do that work for someone else. Some of them may do something totally different. But they're getting really intense, really valuable, high quality experience. And, as somebody who represents people who employ folks in a variety of industries, that's really valuable training and experience. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, because it's great to see, and it obviously has lasting implications on them and the people they're going to work for in the future and whatever it is they do.
Yes, thank you for the credit, and I will pass that credit along to Jody Smith, our Chief Operating Officer, and the rest of our team for building some of those connections. Being in a college town, the ability to partner with the University of Oregon and the extraordinary student body that they have, and some of the infrastructure that they've built at the university to create opportunities for students while they're undergraduates, is been extraordinarily helpful for us. Karen Ramming, our Chief Marketing Officer, has really led some very strong connections with the School of Journalism, getting us, 6 students that are amazing and talented each year to handle writing, to handle photography, to handle video editing. They're really amazing, and we've had a number of great employees, including our Chief Marketing Officer, Karen Ramming, start as undergraduates working in those channels, in those spaces, and that reaching out to the college community has evolved over time. Now we're making outreaches to Oregon State University, to Willamette, up into the Portland area, colleges and universities. It's giving us an opportunity to find talented people, but also people that are really eager and hunger to learn. They come with the advantage of they don't know enough to be worried and to be stressed out about what they don't worry. They just are eager to learn.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. They're not staying up at 2 a.m. fretting over things like I am. So they just come in eager to apply themselves and to get better. And if it doesn't go perfect, they dust themselves off quite quickly, and they rebound tremendously quickly to get better next time. And I think it is a model that has really served us well, and for those that go on to do other things, it's always amazing and fun to see, where life has taken them and the amazing things that they've accomplished afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so OBI is at its core a policy shop. So I can't get out of this podcast without asking you a question that may seem out of left field, but a lot of people probably don't automatically think about the intersection of sports, or the business of sports, and policy, but there are some overlaps. And so I ask everybody I talk to a version of this question. But what would you like legislators or other policymakers in Oregon to know about TrackTown USA, or the work that you do, or the partners that you have, about the opportunities that we need to be leveraging and the challenges we maybe need to be working on fixing.
Well, I think it is very easy to focus on sport for the sporting and the athletic moments, to who made the Olympic team, what world record was set. But all of these, not just our business, but the Eugene Marathon is an extraordinarily successful marathon in the spring. There are underlying business realities and business principles that are guiding and driving what we do here. And the stronger that we are seeding and building the business environment in the state, the more that drives and propels us forward. And ultimately, most of what we're doing in the sports industry is serving as a vehicle and platform for advancing other interests. The World Championships in 2022 were a great, crazy ambition for the state to take on. Who would think that, the number one sporting event outside of the Olympic Games could come to Oregon and could be held in a community like Eugene? If all we thought about was the track and field part of that, then that would have been the most expensive track and field meet ever held anywhere. But what it
Fair
really
point.
was a marketing vehicle for the state of Oregon. The amount of broadcast hours shown globally, shown nationally, there would never be a similar marketing opportunity to buy that much ad time or marketing time to promote the state of Oregon globally as a destination. And I think I think the smart people at Travel Oregon understood that immediately, and I think that's why they were such great champions of the World Championships. But that happens throughout the year, every year. And so the more I think that policy makers think about sports as business, whether that's a major championship event like the Olympic Trials or the U.S. Championships, or an annual participation event like the Eugene Marathon, or just the youth events that are held throughout the state. All of those have tremendous impact on local businesses, and not only in terms of the tax dollars that they generate from hotel stays, but the money that's spent in restaurants and so on. There's real economic driving that is taking place with all of these events, and I think our state does sport extraordinarily well.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, we're closing in on time, but what are some of the upcoming events? This is the early part of the summer. I guess not even technically summer when we're releasing this episode. What do we have in store for us through TrackTown USA this year, and where can people learn more or hopefully buy some tickets?
Well, as I mentioned, there are certain events that we deliver and certain events that others deliver, but the summer schedule for major track and field events is extraordinary. So the University of Oregon will get us started by hosting the NCAA Division I Championships in June. That will roll very quickly into the USA Track and Field Under 20 Championships and the Nike Outdoor Nationals, which is the high school national championship. So 6,000 athletes all competing to be crowned a high school national championship. That'll get us really going with a lot of momentum in June. And then the Prefontaine Classic will expand to 2 days this year, a great evening on Friday, July 3rd, coming back to celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. And then we'll host the global championships, the World Under 20 Championships in August, which really will be a preview of who you can expect to see winning medals at the Los Angeles Olympic Games in 2028. So we're really at kind of every level of the sport. We're hosting the major championship events at Hayward Field. And all those tickets are available at tracktowntickets.com. And you can find out all that information on our social media channels at TrackTown USA.
Yeah, and one last shout out on the social media. If you're at all interested in the sport or the activity, you should follow these guys. They're great. In fact, my understanding is some of your team is accepting an award right
Yes.
now-ish.
Correct. Our video production team just won an Emmy for their series Road to TrackTown last year, and then we have some representatives from our office that are in New York hoping to win another couple of awards.
That's great. Well, congratulations
Thank
to
you.
them. Congratulations to you and the entire TrackTown USA team. And of course, to the athletes that are going to be competing at the best track and field venue in the world. So thank you, Michael Reilly, CEO of TrackTown USA, for joining me today. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of OBI, your statewide chamber, and our episodes can be found on all of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also find out more about OBI on our website at OregonBusinessIndustry.com. Thank you very much.